The Shooting Range. In this episode, Pages of History, the creation of a Soviet heavy tank known as the KV. Naval Triathlon, comparing heavy cruisers. And Metal Beasts, a swift visitor from South Africa. Today we're looking at a South African wheeled tank, the Rooikat 105, that recently joined the list of Britain's premium vehicles. It's a modification of the Rooikat Mark 1D, which we talked about in one of the previous episodes. What sets it apart from its predecessor is that it has a thermal sight and a rifled 105mm gun. The new weapon made the machine a couple of tons heavier and also moved it to BR 8.7, so this one faces MBTs as well. The two-plane stabilized weapon elevates from -10 to +20 degrees. It's paired with a Browning machine gun, plus there are smoke grenade launchers, a laser rangefinder, and the aforementioned thermal sight. The cruise arrangement is classic. The driver is in the front of the hull, and the other crew members are in the turret. The power plant is located in the rear, while the ammo can be found in the center of the vehicle. Okay, we've got powerful armament and good mobility, which means we can play aggressively. The APF SDS rounds penetrate more than 320 millimeters of armor from a kilometer away. It's enough to confidently engage most of your opponents, even when you face them in the front. Of course, some tanks will be trickier to deal with, for example, the Soviet MBTs, but in this case, the Rooikat has another advantage: speed. On a flat road, it can accelerate up to 120 kilometers per hour, which is essentially valuable when your time is running out, and you need to take a valuable position at any cost. Reverse speed is also quite impressive, 44 kilometers per hour. Though, when we talk about wheeled machines, we always need to keep in mind that all of this happens in the so-called perfect conditions. On rough terrain, the results will be several times more modest, or to put it another way, nowhere near as good. Thanks to the good elevation angles, the Rooikat feels great on any terrain, and the stabilizer allows you to fire with precision even at high speed. On the other hand, the machine is very sensitive to distances of fire, and it shows its best at long-distance combat. As for close combat, you generally don't want to get involved in those situations at all. However, if you do get a chance to rush against a lone opponent and destroy him with a precision shot, then why not? Just remember that the encounter can be successful only as long as the enemy doesn't have time to return fire. If you're not 100% sure that you can destroy the enemy in one shot, better disarm the target by breaking its breach first. And even then, you still have to be damn sure that none of its teammates rushes to its aid. In the early 30s, even heavy tanks didn't usually have powerful cannon-proof armor. In theory, they should have been exactly the ones to have the best protection. But in fact, even such giants as the Soviet T-35, the British Independent, or the Japanese Rogo were armored at the level of medium tanks at best. On the other hand, that was enough. Military analysts were placing their trust in mass-produced light tanks, where the armament was often limited to a couple of machine guns and anti-tank weapons were relatively rare. Therefore, having 20, or at best 30mm steel armor was quite enough, and the tanks were still light enough to get additional turrets. At the same time, the military dreamt of a scenario where a single huge tank could be crawling on a fence, firing at the enemy from at least a dozen barrels, with light armored vehicles driving around it. A real ground-based fleet. But in the 30s, these iron giants encountered their nemesis. 37mm and 45mm anti-tank cannons. They were compact, rather rapidly firing, and most importantly, they pierced the armor of almost all modern tanks, as though it was non-existent. The Spanish Civil War showed that the area of anti-bullet defense had come to an end. Something fundamentally different was required. They understood it in the Soviet Union as well. The new guns didn't care if it was a BT-5, a T-26, or a heavy T-35 in front of them. They would confidently riddle it with shells anyway. The concept had to change, and in 1937, engineers received an order for a new heavy tank with strong armor. At first, they were thinking of some T-35-like machine, only with 75mm of armor. But even according to the very rough estimates, the total weight of the tank would increase to 90 tons. Such a monster simply wouldn't be able to move, so they had to reduce the number of turrets to 3, and eventually even settle for only 2 of them. In Leningrad, 2 design teams entered the competition to develop such a machine. The one at SM Kirov Factory No. 185, with the T-100 prototype, and their colleagues and rivals at Kirov Plant, which is a completely different factory, with the SMK prototype, where the letters stand for Sergei Mironovich Kirov. Okay, that's a lot of Kirovs there, so just bear with us. At the same time, the developers of the SMK also started designing a lighter tank with only 1 turret, and it was destined to become the most successful tank of the 3. It had stronger armor, 75mm against 60 of the competitors, but it still was a whole 12 tons lighter, and very soon it got its own name, the KV, after Klim Voroshilov. The military liked the new tank and approved production of the prototype series. The year was already 1939, and the horrible Second World War was already mercilessly creeping up on the world. The USSR invaded Finland, and all 3 prototype models of the new heavy tanks, the T-100, the SMK, and the KV, were given the opportunity to prove themselves in battle. In December, the KV-1 prototype went into attack for the first time. Here's what it's gonna remembered about that battle. The enemy was hitting the right side of our tank, hit after hit, like a sledgehammer. We kept moving. I felt the chill down my leg still. Or maybe it was just the vibrations. And again, hit by hit by hit. And we were still moving. After the battle, the military found 9 hit marks on the hull, but none of the shells managed to penetrate it. While the medium T-28 tanks were burning one after the other, the KV was completely invulnerable to light-caliber weapons. However, a whole series of other problems emerged quite quickly, from engine overheating to ineffective gearbox. The tank resisted external influences quite well, but it regularly broke down by itself. Plus, there was an actual war unwrapping at full speed, and it dictated new requirements to tank designers. A combination of armor and firepower wasn't enough anymore. Mobility became more and more crucial in tank warfare as well. And the KV-1 wasn't mobile at all. Still, it was the one that laid the foundation for the concepts that determined the future of Soviet tank building tradition and formed the basis for many other, much more modern designs. But we'll talk about those some other time. As promised, this time we've got heavy cruisers competing against each other. The participants of today's triathlon are USS Portland from the States, Admiral Graf Spee from Germany, HMS London from Britain, and finally Mogami from Japan. The first test will allow us to assess mobility and maneuverability of the contestants. The goal is to reach a small rock as quickly as possible, make one full circle around it, and return faster than the others. Seems like everyone is ready. Action! The ships are slowly accelerating, and Mogami gradually gets into the lead, while Admiral Graf Spee is noticeably behind. The Japanese cruiser is already making a turn, followed by the American and the British competitors, and the German is still only approaching the rock. The turning circle diameter of all the contestants is pretty much the same, so the places after circling around the rock remain as they were. Finish line, Mogami comes first. HMS London and USS Portland share the second place, and the German crew closes the race. In the second test, we will examine the survivability of these ships. The British cruiser is the least successful here. The armor of its turrets and magazines is only 25mm thick. A lot of heavy-caliber HE rounds will have no problem with that. The bridge, as well as the other superstructures, also cannot boast of any serious protection, and in addition, this ship has the smallest crew of all the participants. USS Portland is armored a little more seriously. The ammunition stores are inaccessible for high explosive rounds, and even for smaller armor-piercing ones, and the side protection can save it from accidental projectile hits at certain angles. Mogami is protected even better. Although most of the superstructures have only shrapnel-proof protection, the conning tower of this cruiser is covered by 100mm of steel. In addition, the athwartship armor can survive a hit from some AP rounds, which noticeably increases the ship's survivability. But despite all that, in this category, the Japanese are only second to the German heavy cruiser. Admiral Graf Spee's gun turrets are almost impregnable, and the spaced side armor protects it against most projectiles. Enemy HE rounds mainly pose a threat to the crew above the deck, while those who are inside the ship can feel safe and sound. Unless, of course, you forget to put out the fires in time. Finally, the third competition will test the weapons of these cruisers. The participants are invited to strike 2 targets down as soon as possible from a distance of 5 kilometers. One Summers-class destroyer, and another one, something a bit tougher, let's say Soviet cruiser Kirov. Well, would you look at that? Another Kirov in our midst. Anyway, time to shoot stuff. Admiral Graf Spee sinks the destroyer with a first blast and begins to reload. This process takes a lot of time. The other ships manage to destroy the first target only with a second volley. While they're preparing for their third one, the German cruiser finishes its reload and shoots again, sending Kirov to the bottom. Second to finish is HMS London. Its semi-armor piercing projectiles detonate the cruiser's ammo. The third to destroy the target is Mogami. 3 volleys of powerful HE projectiles literally tear the enemy to pieces. And USS Portland is the last this time. Its shells are no less powerful, but its fire rate is inferior to its rivals. Let's sum it up. In third place, British HMS London for a decent mobility and good weapons. Besides, there are semi-armor piercing rounds in its ammo, which is much superior in terms of penetration compared to similar projectiles of other countries. Second place goes to Mogami. 10 weapons with good fire rate, added by 24 powerful torpedoes and the best mobility among all the participants. And finally, the first place is deservedly taken by the Germans. Admiral Graf Spee has the best armor and weapons capable of destroying almost any enemy with one successful volley. Write us in the comments what other competitions and challenges you'd like to see, and we'll do our best to bring the most interesting of them to life in one of the next episodes. And now, it's time to go ahead with answers to your questions that you ask in the comments. The first message was sent by a player called Suspicious Grenadier. Why the machine guns of the tanks have different sound from the airplane? Hi there. The main reason for that is that ground and air vehicles are located in completely different environments, and sound transmission there works in different ways as well. Hypothetically speaking, if you would install an aircraft machine gun on a tank, it would sound pretty similar to other machine guns on the ground. Simig00 writes, "Great update coming, but I'm already waiting for the next one." That's good to hear. Our dev team is, of course, already working on the content that you'll only get to see in more distant updates. But everything in due time. First, the players will get to master the novelties of the newest update. There'll be a whole series of very interesting machines for that, and some of them will have features that have never been present in the game before. Then there is a question sent by Crimson Scopes. When you mentioned the thrust-vectored jets during the Cobra maneuver, does that mean they're going to be added soon? Hi there. We did mention those, but without any hints or announcements involved. We just wanted to share a cool fact with you. So no, this doesn't mean that we're planning something like that. Jaimin Shim comes with this message. I'm requesting a climbing the ranks with the French Air Tree, please. Oh, don't you worry, mate, we haven't forgotten about them. There's a great opportunity to talk about the French aviation tree emerging in the near future, and you probably have even guessed what exactly that opportunity is. And the last message for today was written by Mecha G2. Congratulations on hitting the 200th episode mark, Gaijin. This was an episode fitting of such an epic occasion too. Loved it. Here's to another 200 episodes and then some. Well, thank you for your kind words. The show goes on, and we hope to celebrate a lot more anniversaries with you all. Once again, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, which premieres every Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Come on, guys. Keep subscribing to the channel, click the bell, tell us what you think in the comments below, and also, what's your favorite Kirov? See you in a week.